Today we saw the ever-changing views of Grand Canyon's South Rim, and then took the long drive around to visit the far more obscure North Rim. The roads we took today go through some of America's very best scenery, and hardly anyone else was even there. Plus we helped save a critically endangered species of bird. You're welcome. One way to avoid the crowds on Grand Canyon's South Rim is to wake up at 5 a.m. to see the sunrise at Yavapai Point. Not many souls out at this hour. I mean, a few. There were hardly any other people there, though. At first, anyway. Some noisy tourists did show up eventually, but it was okay. We were all in awe of the show. And I found today that the canyon looks very different at different times, with the sunlight creating bright orange rock faces on one side and throwing dramatic shadows on the other. This didn't even really seem like the same canyon as yesterday. Later, after breakfast, Maceo and I drove around to several points along the South Rim. You can go into different buildings and see displays about the recent human history of Grand Canyon, including exploration of the canyon and the Colorado River, and the famed Grand Canyon Railway, a tourist service which still runs today. But inside these buildings, you're really itching to be back outside. And we were lucky again, because now the clouds were throwing all sorts of crazy shapes onto the topography below, changing the views yet again. The occasional wildlife was fun too, but the best part was when we spotted some California condors on ledges just below the rim. These birds, with their bald orange heads, nearly went extinct and only 27 individuals were left in 1987. They were captured and bred in captivity, and then reintroduced to the wild 4 years later. At the time of our visit to the Grand Canyon, there were still fewer than 500 of them. Seeing even one of the rare-numbered California condors is a treat. We saw 2 or 3. Although the greatest bird-related luck will hit us later today, but we'll get to that. As we continued hitting the scenic spots along the South Rim, storms moved in, and once again the scenery shifted. It was funny, it was like the canyon was showing off its different colors and moods today. The final thing we saw was the famous and popular Watchtower. From the top you can see especially captivating views of the Grand Canyon. And from here you can really gaze across to the North Rim, miles away. It's our home for tonight, a 6-hour drive away. The landscape outside the national park boundary is still great, and there are all sorts of interesting pullouts and side roads for unique views. This is actually a canyon being cut by the Little Colorado River. I couldn't find its name. I'll call it Jeremy Canyon. Further away, on Highway 89, we saw more of the painted desert, but now we knew the colored layers well. Well, there's our old friend the white to pink fade. Hey, Gray Blue, how you been? We turned onto a smaller road called Highway 89 Alternate. It goes towards the north rim of the Grand Canyon, but that's still quite a ways away. But there were hardly any other cars around. Somehow, this area, which I thought must be some of America's very best scenery, was hardly being seen by anyone. For the past couple days, I've been so focused on the Grand Canyon that I haven't really investigated much about the surrounding area. So it was a surprise when we came around a corner through the rocks and there was some civilization. This is where a far northeastern tip of Grand Canyon National Park meets the Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, also under the National Park Service. The Navajo Bridge grips the side of the canyon over the Colorado River. Actually, it's two bridges. The new one, built in 1995, that we drove over, and the old one from 1929 next to it, still open for people to walk on, 470 feet above the river. When the original one was opened, it was during Prohibition, so a bottle of ginger ale was used. For the new one in 95, a bucket of Colorado River water was used. And we were there on a very special day. A baby California condor had just been born 2 days earlier. The condor lady had a telescope set up so people could see it being cared for by its father in a crack in the rock on the opposite wall of the canyon. Time to break out a new number plate. Glen Canyon was a great bonus to the drive, but we had to move on, through the red rocks, and other colors, of this weird corner of Arizona. As we neared the Grand Canyon North Rim on State Road 67, which is closed in winter, before our eyes the landscape morphed into dense forests and wide green meadows. Signs promised even greater animal wonders. Didn't actually see any bison though, but I'm not complaining. At the North Rim, there's a special feeling of exclusivity. Far fewer people visit this area, although it's still crowded. But the crowds are quieter and more manageable here. These are the true experience seekers. The visitor center had a nice model explaining why it was so cool and green here. The North Rim is 1,000 feet higher than the South, and huge snowmelt every year erodes the canyon way more than the South. The river is twice as far from the rim up here, so the geology is even more lively and dynamic. This visitor center also righted the wrong from back at the Alamo. So there, Texas. We've been hitting a national park or similar site every day or two for a while now, and it's been kind of frantic. But in the visitor center, I overheard a guy telling a ranger that he and his wife were on a 2-week road trip to 21 parks. What do they do, circle around the parking lot? There may be fewer people, but sleeping at the North Rim is still kind of expensive. Over $100 each for the night, which is not really in our trip budget. But you get something for the cost when you stay in the lodge. A real wooden cabin, very homey, with a fireplace and a porch to eat your dinner. My blood sugars had been perfect all day. I credit the stress-reducing landscapes. Nature fixes you. After dinner, we went to watch the sunset and see the snow-carved pinnacles and cliffs of the secretive North Rim. Just us and a few others, getting a new perspective on a classic canyon. Tomorrow we spend the morning seeing more of the North Rim's views and forests, and then head into another new state, Utah, to see about fixing Masayo's iPhone and maybe finding a place to rest up a bit.